had these dreams lately.
What dreams?
Somebody gets me.
Top Hollywood's 20 most erotic movies. Here goes my vote. Get ready to turn up the heat. In this video, we're counting down the top 20 most erotic movies Hollywood has ever produced. Brace yourself for a journey through passion, seduction, and unforgettable cinematic moments. Let's dive in. Number 20, Notorious, 1946. With this twisted love story, Alfred Hitchcock summoned darker shades of suspense and passion by casting two of Hollywood's most beloved stars starkly against type. Ingrid Bergman plays Alicia, an alluring woman with a checkered past recruited by Devlin, Cary Grant, a suave, mysterious intelligence agent, to spy for the U.S. Only after she has fallen for Devlin does she learn that her mission to seduce a Nazi industrialist, Claude Rains, hiding out in South America. Coupling inventive cinematography with brilliantly subtle turns from his mesmerizing leads, Hitchcock orchestrates an anguished romance shot through with deception and moral ambiguity. A thriller of rare perfection, Notorious represents a pinnacle of both its director's legendary career and classic Hollywood cinema. Few films got around Hays Code censorship with the heat that Hitchcock brought to the absolute barn burner of a kiss between Ingrid Bergman and Cary Grant, one of the all-time great movie smooches. In his romantic noir about spies infiltrating a ring of Nazis in Brazil. Finding a crack in the 3-second maximum ruling, the director had his actors break off multiple times during their 2.5 minutes of locking lips, punctuating the scene with dialogue, nuzzling, a head resting on a shoulder, and even a phone call. Bergman's Alicia talks about a chicken in the icebox and a nice bottle of wine, but the appetite these two have for each other is all that matters. Number 19, Double Indemnity, 1944. Has dialogue ever been more perfectly hard-boiled? Has a femme fatale ever been as deliciously wicked as Barbara Stanwyck? And has 1940s Los Angeles ever looked so seductively sordid? Working with co-writer Raymond Chandler, director Billy Wilder launched himself onto the Hollywood A-list with this epitome of film noir fatalism from James M. Cain's pulp novel. When slick salesman Walter Neff, Fred McMurray, walks into the swank home of dissatisfied housewife Phyllis Dietrichson, Stanwyck, he intends to sell insurance, but he winds up coming entangled with her in a far more sinister way. Barbara Stanwyck is trouble. You know that from the first time Fred McMurray's Los Angeles insurance agent, Walter Neff, sees her semi-clad character, Phyllis Dietrichson, upstairs during a house call, shooting him a look that reels him in without a word. He never stands a chance of coming away unscarred. Billy Wilder's film of the James M. Cain novel is a canonical noir, tracing Phyllis's plan to murder her husband and cash in on an accidental death claim. But the crime elements wouldn't be half as potent without the spell of sexual intoxication she casts over Walter, conveyed entirely through mood and innuendo. Featuring scene-sealing supporting work from Edward G. Robinson and the chiaroscuro of cinematographer John F. Seitz, Double Indemnity is one of the most entertainingly perverse stories ever told and the standard by which all noir must be measured. Number 18, Shampoo, 1975. In this farcical satire of 60s sexual practices, Warren Beatty is a hairdresser who simply can't resist the women he glamorizes. They can't resist him either, and unfortunately, they are all linked somehow. Beatty's freewheeling and funny escapades with 3 of his lovers culminate in an election night party, Nixon wins, which all 3 attend, along with another older, Richard man who is married to one of Beatty's conspirators and whom Beatty happens to be soliciting for startup funds for his own beauty business. At the party, all 3 women desperately want Beatty's attention, and the resulting debacle causes him to reconsider his lifestyle. Warren Beatty's tabloid reputation as a Hollywood Lothario was so widespread in the 70s that Mad Magazine once jokingly wondered why he hadn't slept with Shirley MacLaine, their brother and sister kids. Nowhere was his alleged prowess with women more knowingly exploited than in Hal Ashby's rollicking satire of sexual politics, and by extension, regular politics, in Nixon-era America. In a project he tailored for himself, Beatty plays a horny Los Angeles hairdresser who wields a blowdryer like an extra penis, wending his way through the bedrooms of Beverly Hills while seeking to bankroll his own salon. even sleeping with the wife, Lee Grant, mistress, Julie Christie, and 17-year-old daughter, Carrie Fisher, of a potential investor, Jack Warden, doesn't appear to forestall that dream. Number 17. HUD, 1963. HUD, America film drama released in 1963, that presented a raw and contemporary take on the Western and featured Paul Newman as perhaps the most unsympathetic character he ever played. The movie, based on Larry McMurtry's novel Horseman, Passed By, 1961, centers on HUD Bannon, played by Newman, a brash, womanizing, self-centered manipulator who is anxious to control his aging father's cattle empire. In the course of his efforts, HUD both charms and alienates the tough-as-nails housekeeper, Alma, Patricia Neal, and his nephew, Lon, Brandon DeWild, who idolizes him. The performances in the film drew universal acclaim. Melvin Douglas won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in his role as the fading but proud elderly rancher who constantly battles HUD while trying to teach Lon the value of integrity and responsibility. Neal received the Best Actress Oscar as one of the women who could resist HUD's charms. James Wong Howe's black and white cinematography made the Texas landscape appear as bleak as HUD's soul. Paul Newman was never more beautiful than in the late 50s and early 60s, so any number of his roles from that period came loaded with an erotic charge. The alcoholic former high school athlete in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, the pool shark in The Hustler, the gigolo in Sweet Bird of Youth. But the actor's raw sexuality was never more on prodigious display than in Martin Ritt's drama about an arrogant Texas cattleman, insensitive to the needs of everyone around him. An attempted rape scene deepens the character's anti-hero status, but seldom has male beauty been more vividly appreciated than when Patricia Neal's jaded housekeeper Alma tells him, "You look pretty good without your shirt on, you know." Sight of that through the kitchen window made me put down my dish towel more than once. Number 16. Belle de Jour, 1967. Beautiful young housewife Séverine Cerise, Catherine Deneuve, cannot reconcile her masochistic fantasies with her everyday life alongside dutiful husband Pierre, Jean Sorel. When her love-struck friend Henry, Michael Piccoli, mentions a secretive high-class brothel run by Madame Anet, Genevieve Page, Séverine begins to work there during the day under the name Belle de Jour. But when one of her clients, Pierre Clemente, grows possessive, she must try to go back to her normal life. Catherine Deneuve's porcelain perfection hides a cracked interior in one of the actress's most iconic roles, Séverine, a Paris housewife who begins secretly spending her afternoon hours working in a bordello. This surreal and erotic late 60s daydream from provocateur for the ages Louis Bunel is an examination of desire and fetishistic pleasure, its characters, and its viewers, as well as a gently absurdist take on contemporary social mores and class divisions. Fantasy and reality commingle in this burst of cinematic transgression, which is one of Bunel's biggest hits. Belle de Jour is a 1967 French surrealistic, erotic psychological drama film directed by Louis Bunel and starring Catherine Deneuve, Jean Sorel, and Michel Piccoli. Based on the 1928 novel Belle de Jour by Joseph Kessel. The title of the film is a play on words on the French term belle de nuit, beauty of the night, in other words, a prostitute, as Séverine works during the day under the pseudonym Belle de Jour. Her nickname can also be interpreted as a reference to the French name of the morning glory, Canne-Volacée, meaning beauty of the day, a flower that blooms only during the day. Belle de Jour is one of Bunel's most successful and famous films. It was Deneuve's second acclaimed success after The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. It won the Golden Lion and the Pazzanetti Award for Best Film at the Venice Film Festival in 1967. Number 15, Lolita, 1962. With a screenplay penned by the author himself, Stanley Kubrick brings Vladimir Nabokov's controversial tale of forbidden love to the screen. Humbert, James Mason, is a European professor who relocates to an American suburb, renting a room from lonely widow Charlotte Hayes, Shelley Winters. Humbert marries Charlotte, but only to nurture his obsession with her comely teenage daughter, Lolita Sue Lyon. After Charlotte's sudden death, Humbert has Lolita all to himself, or does he? Humbert forces a confrontation with a man, whose name he has just recently learned, in the man's home. The events that led to this standoff began 4 years earlier. Middle-aged Humbert, a European, arrives in the United States where he has secured a job at Beardsley College in Beardsley, Ohio, as a professor of French literature. Before he begins his post in the fall, he decides to spend the summer in the resort town of Ramsdale, New Hampshire. He's given the name of Charlotte Hayes as someone who is renting a room in her home for the summer. He finds that Charlotte, widowed now for 7 years, is a woman who puts on airs. Among the demonstration of those airs is throwing around the name of Claire Quilty, a television and stage script writer who came to speak at her women's club meeting and who she implies is now a friend. Those airs also mask being lonely, especially as she is a sexually aggressive and liberated woman. Humbert considers Charlotte a proverbial joke, but decides to rent the room upon meeting Charlotte's provocative daughter, Dolores Hayes, more frequently referred to as Lolita, who he first spots in a bikini tanning in the backyard. He's immediately infatuated with Lolita, with whom he becomes obsessed in a sexual manner despite her age, she being just into her teens. He will also learn that Charlotte has the exact same feelings for him. While Charlotte does whatever she can to be alone with Humbert, Humbert does the same with Lolita. As the summer progresses, Humbert, based on the circumstances, decides to enter into a relationship with Charlotte just to be near Lolita. In that new arrangement, Humbert has to figure out how to achieve his goal of being with Lolita with Charlotte out of the way. As things begin to go Humbert's way, he is unaware that Charlotte is not the only thing standing in his way between him and Lolita. The other thing being Lolita's possible interest in other boys and other members of the male sex, young or old, who may have their own designs on Lolita. Number 14. Last Tango in Paris, 1972. Distraught following his wife's suicide, American hotelier Paul Marlon Brando becomes transfixed by the beautiful younger French woman Jean Maria Schneider when he meets her by chance at an apartment both are attempting to rent. The couple begin an extended but purely anonymous sexual relationship in which they do not even tell each other their names, but it soon becomes clear that the couple's deliberate level of disassociation cannot continue. Last Tango in Paris is a 1972 erotic drama film directed by Bernardo Bertolucci. The film premiered at the New York Film Festival on 14 October 1972 and grossed $36 million in its U.S. theatrical release, making it the 7th highest-grossing film of 1973. The film's raw portrayal of rape and emotional turmoil led to international controversy and drew various levels of government censorship in different jurisdictions. Upon release in the United States, the MPAA gave the film an X rating. United Artists Classics released an R-rated cut in 1981. In 1997, after the film became a part of the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Library, the film was reclassified as NC-17. Number 13. Women in Love, 1969. Close friends Rupert Birkin, Alan Bates, and Gerald Critch, Oliver Reed, begin romances with siblings Ursula, Jenny Linden, and Gudrun Brangwen, Glenda Jackson. After the couples wed, they take a joint honeymoon to Switzerland, where things begin happily, but they become increasingly complicated as the trip continues. Rupert and Ursula are determined to stay faithful to one another, while the aloof Gerald and the eccentric Gudrun turn to infidelity and sexual exploration. With this film, the audacious Ken Russell vaulted onto the international stage, drawing on the psychosexual radicalism of D.H. Lawrence's classic novel to shatter taboos in his own time. Set in an English mining community on the crest of modernity, Women in Love traces the shifting currents of desire that linked the emancipated Brangwen sisters, Jenny Linden and an Oscar-winning Glenda Jackson, to a free-thinking dreamer, Alan Bates, and a hard-willed industrialist, Oliver Reed, as well as the men's own erotically charged friendship. Coupling earthly sensuality with kaleidoscopically stylized images, Russell pursues this quartet to the heights of agony and ecstasy, crafting a breathtaking drama of human sexuality at its most liberating, dominating, and destructive extremes. Number 12. Obsession, 1976. Michael Cortland, Cliff Robertson, is a husband and father whose wife, Elizabeth Genevieve Bujold, and daughter, Amy Wanda Blackman, have been kidnapped. When a rescue attempt fails, Elizabeth and Amy are killed, leaving Michael devastated and alone. After years of mourning, Michael travels to Italy and meets Sandra Portinari, a woman with a familiar face. Deeply in love and still haunted by the memory of Elizabeth and Amy, Michael fears that Sandra may face a similar fate. Both De Palma and Schrader have pointed to Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, 1958, as the major inspiration for Obsession's narrative and thematic concerns. Schrader's script was extensively rewritten and pared down by De Palma before shooting, causing the screenwriter to proclaim a complete lack of interest in the film's subsequent production and release. Completed in 1975, Columbia Pictures picked up the distribution rights, but demanded that minor changes be made to reduce potentially controversial aspects of the plot. When finally released in the late summer of 1976, it became De Palma's first substantial box office success and received mixed reviews from critics. Number 11, The Devils, 1971. In 17th century France, Father Grandier, Oliver Reed, is a priest whose unorthodox views on sex and religion influence a passionate following of nuns, including the sexually obsessed Sister Jean, Vanessa Redgrave. When the power-hungry Cardinal Richelieu, Christopher Logue, realizes he must eliminate Grandier to gain control of France, Richelieu portrays Grandier as a Satanist and spearheads a public outcry to destroy the once-loved priest's reputation. Infamous for its controversial release, the film was banned in several countries and received an X rating only after Russell cut a handful of the most incendiary scenes. The 1971 epic offers a stylish and scathing parable about the dangerous ways that the powerful can exploit religious zeal to stay that way. Based on the true story of the trial of Urbain Grandier, a Catholic priest who was executed in 1634 on charges of witchcraft, Russell adapted The Devils from John Whiting's 1960 play and Aldous Huxley's 1952 novel, The Devils of Loudun. Russell digressed stylistically from his source material, taking a contemporary approach to the historical fare by saturating it with markers of the sexual liberation in 1970. Blending religious iconography with sumptuous sexual imagery in outrageous ways, the film drew ire from religious groups at the time, causing Warner Brothers to release it with little fanfare. Number 10, The Beast, 1975. In order to inherit a fortune, a young woman agrees to marry a young man. She soon discovers that his family harbors a dark past involving a monstrous beast. The Beast is a 1975 French erotic horror film written, edited, and directed by Valerian Barawazic. Although sometimes compared with Beauty and the Beast, there are no parallels to the plot, except that it features the relationship between a beast, a monster, and a woman. The film was noted for its explicit sexual content, including zoophilia, upon its initial release. It has become a cult film. A loose adaptation of the novella Lokis by Prosper Mérimée was originally conceived in 1972 as a film on its own. However, Barawazic later rendered Lokis as a story, La véritable histoire de la bête de Govardhana, in Immortal Tales 1974, which was envisaged to be a film of 6 stories. After Immortal Tales was remastered as a film of 4 stories, the footage became the dream sequence of the Beast. 9. The Night Porter, 1974. In this unsettling drama from Italian filmmaker Liliana Cavani, a concentration camp survivor, Charlotte Rampling, discovers her former torturer and lover, Dirk Bogarde, working as a porter at a hotel in post-war Vienna. When the couple attempt to recreate their sadomasochistic relationship, his former SS comrades begin to stalk them. Operatic and disturbing, The Night Porter deftly examines the lasting social and psychological effects of the Nazi regime. The Night Porter is a 1974 Italian psychological war drama film. Directed and co-written by Liliana Cavani, the film stars Dirk Bogarde and Charlotte Rampling, with Felipe Leroy, Gabrielle Frazzetti, and Isa Miranda in supporting roles. The film's themes of sexual and sadomasochistic obsession, and its use of Holocaust imagery have made the film controversial since its initial release, dividing critics over its artistic value. In July 2018, it was selected to be screened in the Venice Classic section at the 75th Venice International Film Festival. Number 8. Ecstasy, 1933. Eva has just gotten married to an older gentleman, but discovered that he is obsessed with order in his life and doesn't have much room for passion. She becomes despondent and leaves him, returning to her father's house. One day while bathing in the lake, she meets a young man and they fall in love. The husband has become grief-stricken at the loss of his young bride, and fate brings him together with the young lover that has taken Eva from him. Czech director Makati's overheated melodrama about an impotent husband, a frisky young wife, and the beau who spots her skinny dipping made an international icon of 19-year-old Hedy Keisler. U.S. Customs burned an uncensored print, but it didn't stop MGM's Louis B. Mayer from signing up the starlet, renaming her Hedy Lamarr, and launching a new Hollywood goddess. Hedy's much-cut nude swimming brought her notoriety, though even more groundbreaking is a semi-clothed love scene where the camera rests on her face as passion mounts. Note also the highly symbolic string of pearls falling to the floor. Number 7. Sweet Movie, 1974. The intricate story of two women, a nearly mute beauty queen who descends into withdrawal and madness, and another who captains a ship laden with candy and sugar, luring men and boys aboard for sex, death, and revolutionary talk. The beauty queen passes from a wealthy husband whose honeymoon delight is to urinate on her, to a muscular keeper who punches her, stows her in a suitcase and ships her to Paris, to a lip-syncing rock idol with whom she has a love spasm, to an Austrian commune complete with a banquet of vomit, urine, feces, chopped dildos, and wet nurses. By then, she's in a fetal position, until everyone's rescued by reminders that it's just a movie. Pushing his themes of sexual liberation to their boiling point, Yugoslavian art house provocateur Dusan Makavejev followed his international sensation WR, Mysteries of the Organism, with this full-throated shriek in the face of bourgeois complacency and movie watching. Sweet Movie tackles the limits of personal and political freedom with kaleidoscopic feverishness, shuttling viewers from a gynecological beauty pageant to a grotesque food orgy with scatological, taboo-shattering glee. With its lewd abandon and sketch comedy perversity, Sweet Movie became both a cult staple and exemplar of the envelope-pushing of 1970s cinema. Number 6. La Piscine, 1968. Set in the summertime of Côte d'Azur, it is a drama of sexual jealousy and possessiveness. Both French and English language versions of the film were made, with the actors filmed speaking English for the international release, which was unusual at a time when movies were either always dubbed or subtitled. The 114-minute international release, shorter than the French version, also had slightly different editing. 4 characters, a Mediterranean villa, sun, sex, and suspicion. The ingredients are fairly simple in this star-powered psychological thriller, which has remained underexposed outside of France. This is a deliciously languid, slinkily unsettling affair. Romy Schneider is all feline elegance and sphinx-like intelligence as the girlfriend of the brooding wastrel Alain Delon. Their erotically charged Saint-Tropez sojourn is interrupted by the arrival of flamboyantly smug Maurice Ronet, with teenage jailbait daughter Jane Birkin in tow. Little is said, but past indiscretions hang in the air. The 60s trappings and jazz meets psychedelia score are treasure enough in themselves, but it is Duray's beady concentration on the pointed silences and angled looks which really turn the screw. Bourgeois scum Claude Chabrol territory, essentially, but done with a more commercial eye for showing off Schneider and Delon's bronzed curves. Number 5. Eyes of Laura Mars, 1978. New York fashion photographer Laura Mars, Faye Dunaway, fresh from her Oscar for Network, has visions that influence her provocative work, notorious for mingling sex and violence. When Laura realizes she has the ability to see through the eyes of a serial killer as they commit gruesome crimes, it's a race against time with police detective John Neville, Tommy Lee Jones, to identify and stop the killer. Based on a story by horror master John Carpenter, shot entirely on location and with costumes by Academy Award winner Theoni V. Aldridge, The Great Gatsby. Eyes of Laura Mars showcases New York's seedy disco glamour era. Fashion photographer Rebecca Blake consulted on the movie, and its images draw on her work as well as the era's top lenses, from fetishistic Helmut Newton to erotic fantasist Guy Bourdon, and haunting, melancholic Deborah Turbeville, on whom Laura is specifically based. Number 4. Persona, 1966. Bergman at his most brilliant as he explores the symbiotic relationship that evolves between an actress suffering a breakdown in which she refuses to speak and the nurse in charge as she recuperates in a country cottage. To comment is to betray the film's extraordinary complexity, but basically it returns to two favorite Bergman themes: the difficulty of true communication between human beings and the essentially egocentric nature of art. Here the actress, named Vogler after the charlatan artist in The Face, dries up in the middle of a performance, thereafter refusing to exercise her art. We aren't told why, but from the context it's a fair guess that she withdraws from a feeling of inadequacy in face of the horrors of the modern world, and in her withdrawal, she watches with detached tolerance as humanity, the nurse chattering on about her troubled sex life, reveals its petty woes. Then comes the weird moment of communion in which the two women merge as one. Charlatan or not, the artist can still be understood and can therefore still understand. Not an easy film, but an infinitely rewarding one. By the mid-60s, Ingmar Bergman has already conjured many of the cinema's most unforgettable images. But with the radical persona, he attained new levels of visual poetry. In the first of a series of legendary performances for Bergman, Liv Ullmann plays a stage actor who has inexplicably gone mute. An equally mesmerizing Bibi Andersson is the garrulous young nurse caring for her in a remote island cottage. While isolated together there, the women undergo a mysterious spiritual and emotional transference. Performed with astonishing nuance and shot in stark contrast and soft light by Sven Nykvist, the influential persona is a penetrating, dreamlike work of profound psychological depth. Number 3. The Kiss, 1896. The Kiss, also known as the May Irwin Kiss, the Rice Irwin Kiss, and the Widow Jones, is an 1896 film and was one of the first films ever shown commercially to the public. Around 18 seconds long, it depicts a reenactment of the kiss between May Irvin and John Rice from the final scene of the stage musical The Widow Jones. The film was directed by William Heiss for Thomas Edison. The film was produced in April 1896 at the Edison Studios of Edison, the first film studio in the United States. At the time, Edison was working at the Black Maria Studios in West Orange, New Jersey. Both MGM's and Garbo's Last Silent, this is one of the actress's most memorable films, simply because it combines characteristic studio gloss, art direction by Cedric Gibbons, luminous close-ups by William Daniels, with a genuine feeling for her mixture of erotic glamour and doomy passion. As a woman tried for the murder of a husband who refuses her a divorce, she's perfectly cast, while Ayers makes a fine show as the youngster whose kiss seals her fate. And Fedor's direction contrives to transcend the novelettish nature of the material by means of its elegance, ambiguity, and sheer commitment to the melodramatic emotions. Number 2. The Graduate, 1967. Mike Nichols' era-defining film rolled through boring suburbia like a Sherman tank. It forever established Benjamin Braddock, Dustin Hoffman, as the poster boy for aimless post-college youth. Influential in its time and far beyond, The Graduate broke new ground with an all Simon & Garfunkel soundtrack and radical camera angles that brought the desperation of being young in the 60s into focus. And went even further with its eroticism. Mrs. Robinson's Anne Bancroft, outstretched, stocking-clad leg, gave Ben a new sense of direction. And of course, today, the name Mrs. Robinson is synonymous with an enticing older woman. One of the most beloved American films of all time, The Graduate earned Mike Nichols a Best Director Oscar, brought the music of Simon & Garfunkel to a wider audience, and introduced the world to a young actor named Dustin Hoffman. Benjamin Braddock, Hoffman, has just finished college and is already lost in a sea of confusion and barely contained angst when he becomes sexually involved with the friend of his parents, the indomitable Mrs. Robinson, Anne Bancroft. before turning his attention to her college-age daughter, Catherine Ross. Visually imaginative and impeccably acted, with a clever, endlessly quotable script by Buck Henry, based on the novel by Charles Webb, The Graduate had the kind of cultural impact that comes along only once in a generation. Number 1. Deep Throat, 1972. Possibly the most famous X-rated film of all time. Comedic sex romp Deep Throat stars 23-year-old Lovelace as a woman who discovers her clitoris is in her throat. Linda is unable to orgasm, so she pays a visit to a psychiatrist, Dr. Young, Reams, a real kook, but horny as hell. He discovers her unusual condition. His solution? A technique called Deep Throat. He suggests Linda practice on him. Deep Throat is a 1972 landmark American pornographic film written and directed by Gerard Damiano, listed in his credits as Jerry Gerard, and starring Linda Lovelace, Linda Susan Borman. It is considered the forefront of the golden age of porn, which is 1969 through 1984. One of the first pornographic films to feature a plot, character development, and relatively high production values, Deep Throat earned mainstream attention and launched the porno chic trend, although the film was the subject of obscenity trials and banned in some jurisdictions. Deep Throat brought hardcore sex to the mainstream. Celebs like Martin Scorsese, Jack Nicholson, and Truman Capote went to see it, as did millions more. The clampdown, Deep Throat was banned in certain parts of the US, only fueled the phenomenon. Shot for $25,500 of mob money, it made an estimated $500 million at the box office. Years later, the film was still making headlines when Lovelace claimed that her then-husband, Chuck Traynor, forced her into taking the part. Lovelace later wrote that she was coerced and sexually assaulted during the production, and that the film is genuine rape pornography. Did your favorite make the list? Comment below and let us know your top pick. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more sizzling content. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.